Good morning. Got two hands to review. Both hands I'm in mid position and open raise. So in hand number one, under the gun limps, low jack limps. I raised the five big blinds. So this is a 25 NL hand. During my usual play, I raise three big blinds plus one for every limper ahead of me. You can adjust this. You can increase it if you have players that like to limp call a lot. So for this first player, villain 8, let's get that moved over just slightly so his stats are a little bit easier to read. I only have four hands on him. On this player, I only have four hands on him. But let's say it was villain 9. I've got a limp and called raise 67%, limp and fold 33%. So this would be a candidate where if he limps, I may raise a little bit more. So it may raise to 6 or 7 big blinds with my better hands because I know that he's going to call. So with the ace queen, ace king suited, aces, kings, queens, I know that there's going to be a high likelihood that he's going to call his limp. So and he folds the c bet 67%. So what I'm trying to do is get the money in there now before he folds. But five big blinds is okay. Let's look at these limping ranges. So I don't have much, but at a 25 NL game, I think what we're going to be looking at are really somewhat weaker hands. I think you tend to see pre-flop raises, raise first ends with ace queen, ace jacks, king queen, queens, probably jacks as well. I think early position raisers, you can occasionally get raises with the lower suited aces, but other players aren't like that. They're not usually polarized as much. So what they will do then is just call with their suited aces. They'll call with their low pocket pairs. They normally don't. Early position, they normally don't limp with hands like that. You'll see or hands like ace 10 off, jack 10 off, queen 10 off. Sometimes they'll limp with queen jack off, sometimes not. Maybe not with king jack off. But this could be a limping range. That's about 11%, depending on how loose they are. That's at 12%. This villain, 25-0, hasn't none of these have really raised. But let's look at this guy. This is 2017. So if we look at his VPIP, it's 20%. Early position is 18 with a pre-flop raise of 7%. So we're looking at out of that 20% that he's open raising, I'm sorry, 18% that he's paying, 7 of those hands are pre-flop raise. So we're looking at maybe 10% range. So, this guy is probably limping maybe like that. Probably the ace jack, maybe limping ace queen offsuit and getting rid of that. So that could be a limping range for villain 9. Versus an unknown, we're going to add in big hands, and I tend to find that it's the pocket pairs that they tend to be heavy on. They tend to limp with the pocket pairs and get rid of everything else. I'm going to keep villain 10 about the same range, so we're looking at that. I raised ace 4, and ace 4 is okay. You've got the ace. Obviously, if they're playing the suited aces, we're going to have kicker problems. But we have potential of hitting that flush or straight, especially at a time where, let's say it comes 2-3-5 or something like that. They could hit those trips and they'll likely pay off because they won't really give you credit for having that ace 4. Right now we're raising. We're likely to get position, which we did get. And of the two players, villain 8 called. And I think that normally these villains, if they have a tighter range like this at 11%, when you raise, they tend to call with the same. They may tighten up. They may get rid of some of those. They may get rid of some of the low suited aces, but they're normally going to keep all of their pocket pairs in that range. So that's what we're going to do. Against that calling range, we are at 44.28%, so we need some help here. Flop comes ace jack 2 with 2 spades. So we hit our top pair hand, which is good. Villain 8 could also hit his top pair. Again, it's a little bit unknown, and our hand's a little bit vulnerable. What we're hoping to do now is try to make our play to get out hands that might beat us. So I kind of think if we beat, we're gonna probably get called by like the ace 10 to ace 6 range. I think we're probably gonna get called by all of the suited aces. And they'll probably call once, but then on the turn, oftentimes ace 10 to ace 6, these low kickers are going to end up folding. So our aggression is what's going to win us the pot. If we just check behind and then bet the turn in the river, it's going to give him reason to call it, because he might think that we have a jack, and then if he calls, we're going to have problems with our kicker. If we bet also, I think a jack might call, maybe. We don't know how this player plays. And also the spade draws. So with our bet, we've got top pair, and we have a long shot backdoor straight draw. Villain 8 checks, which I think he's going to check with his entire range at this point. We bet half pot, and he calls. So what is he going to call with? I think he's going to call with his pairs, his flush draws, his gut shots. I think will also call. 2-card backdoor flush draws, I don't know. So you can see that he's basically calling with his entire range at this point. He's got some weaker cards in there that I think will fold to a double barrel. So that's kind of what our plan was. We're going to look to fire a double barrel, except maybe on a spade. It just kind of has to depend on what the spade is. So, if it was like a 10 of spades or queen or king of spades, I think I'd fire, because it's going to be less likely that he's going to have that spade draw. And it's going to be much more likely now that we hit our 2 pair, and he'll probably fold his ace middle kickers. We hit 2 pair now, and I think at this point we're probably going to be way ahead. So what does he do? He actually fires into us, and he fires a smallish bet. I kind of think this might be a blocking bet, a bet designed to get us to a cheaper showdown, because if he were to check and I fire a bet, I'm going to probably fire at least half pot, maybe 2/3 pot here. I'd probably fire 2/3 pot with 2 pair, knowing that the better aces might better aces. We don't really have a whole lot of aces left. I think that the ace 10 to ace 7 and ace 6 will probably fold if I bet 2/3. But the spades will draw, or the spades will call. Now he fires out, and the question is, what is he going to bet out with? I don't think it makes sense for him to bet out with a set, and I don't think it makes sense for him to bet out with 2 pair. I think those hands are just going to check raise. I think they should check raise. You've got a big hand, they check. If I check behind, so be it. I mean, it's maybe I'm on that spade draw, but I think what you're trying to do, you don't, by checking, you're allowing me to bet and get more money in there, that you could then build the size of the pot. And at this point, the pot was 24 big blinds. I've got 95 behind still. So I kind of think maybe his top pair hand could be betting here, because he's unsure. He doesn't want to face a bigger bet. So the ace, maybe weaker kicker, maybe a middle pair. But I think the middle pair is going to have to be part maybe with the flush draw. And we don't really have that, because the ace and the jack are on the board. So I think a flush draw is going to bet. I don't really think so. A middle pair, maybe. Maybe this is his attempt to, where he says, I don't believe you have the ace, so I'm going to bet now with, jack, with, king, jack, queen, jack, and so forth. Weak pair, Probably not. Um, so that's, I kind of think maybe a flush draw is just going to check fold. Uh, Maybe he donks. It's player specific. Player specific. So at that range, I'm way ahead at this point. I think if I raise, he's probably just gonna fold. He's gonna fold that top pair, middle pair, because again, I think if I raise, he would have check raised his better hands, his sets and two pairs. So I just called, which I think is okay. If he has a flush draw, we're letting him draw cheaply to it, and I think that's the one negative. If we think he's capable of donking with a flush draw, then I think we need to raise. We can't let him set his own price for the flush draw. Uh, River was a nine of diamonds. That doesn't help. Pot's 42.8. He bets 29, and then it's up to us. Do we just call or do we raise? So now he bet like small. Remember, 9 into 24. That's, maybe like what, 40%? 9 into 24. So yeah, 38%. And now he bet 29 into 42 or 43. Now he bet 67. He bet, 2/3 pot. What does he have? I think that may have hit him. So maybe, he could have had the two pair, the ace nine now, maybe. Or he's thinking that just because I called, maybe I had that spade. So the top pair hands would be all of these aces, and I, again, I don't. It's going to be player specific, but I don't understand why you would bet again with the ace, because the ace is in my range. Middle pair, maybe he has the jack and he's looking for, flush, or this is maybe he has a miss flush and this is his way to say, hey, this is the only way I can win the hand. So the question is, do we call or do we raise? I think if we raise, we only get called by two pair, and the only two pair I have in his range now is ace nine. I think if we raise, I think all the top pairs are going to fold, and I'm kind of happy with this 2/3 pot bet. So I think, what we should do is probably just call, because I don't think we're getting called by worse. So that's what I did. I just called. He shows king queen, which is interesting. I have king queen in his initial range. So his whole play was just a bluff. He's thinking I don't. Yeah, he's thinking that I don't have anything. He doesn't believe that I have the ace. So in his mind, and he knows, since he has a king, I don't have king queen of spades. I don't have, I could possibly have queen 10 of spades, but he doesn't believe I have the ace. So when he bet, I think that 9 was a weak bet. That's why I said I kind of think if we think he's going to do it with the spade, that was our chance to raise, to force him to actually call, and make a bad call, because they will make that call with the spade flush. For this player, I don't think he's gonna bet and then I don't think he's gonna bet and then fold. I'm sorry, I don't think he's gonna bet and then call with his king queen. So yeah, we've got that gut shot that he called, and then on the 4 of hearts, he still had, basically your gut shot, which had to be in there. I don't like his play. I don't like his play. I think he could have, done it much better. He could have easily check raised. If he doesn't believe I have the ace, he could have easily check raised and put me to a hard decision, because if I don't have the ace 4, then I'm thinking, okay, how good is my kicker? I could call ace king. Maybe I could call ace queen, but with this check raise, he's representing, maybe jacks, trip twos, maybe the two pair, ace two, uh, or ace four that he hit. It would be unfortunate for him that I actually had the ace four, but I think that's a little bit better. All right, so we didn't really have it king queen in his range. We didn't think he would be able to bluff the turn with a small bet, and perhaps a smaller size bet was revealing that it wasn't a very strong hand, and maybe then we could put in, you know, the gut shot as a potential bluff card. All right, let me clear these out, and let's get to hand number two. All right, hand number two is also a 25 NL game. I'm also in mid position, but we're only seven-handed, so I am second to act here. So I open raise to three big blinds with pocket sixes. I think that's pretty standard. Lower pocket pairs gives me board coverage. The button calls, and the small blind calls. So both players tend to be loose. We'll start with the button. It's 37-14. He calls two bets 42% of the time. On the button, we've seen him play half of the hand. He's raised 25%, so half of the half. Pre-flop, call two bets. It's 1 out of 2 that he has called. It's only 30 out of 35 hands, so I think he's going to be pretty wide. We're going to give him pockets, broadways. We're going to give him suited aces. I think we're going to give him a few more of these suited cards. We're going to take out. So out of 35 hands, he has raised he has three bet 1 out of 19 of them. So maybe he's a little bit aggressive pre-flop. I think he would definitely raise queens plus, maybe jacks plus, and ace king. I think maybe his aces, offsuit aces, maybe. Let's not go all the way down. Let's go to ace six. Maybe king 10. Maybe these offsuit cards. We're at 30%. I think that's probably suitably wide for him for a button call, especially against more of a under the gun +1. Again, technically mid position, but second act type of player. Villain 4 is probably a little bit tighter. So what we will do is copy this range, bring in our next one, and paste it. So he's a little bit tighter when he plays. His call 2-bet from the small blinds at 19%. His 3-bets, bet pie position is 1 out of 27 from the small blind. So I think he's going to probably limit his 3-bets to like kings plus, ace king. And this player's probably not going to be playing these these offsuit hands. These are considered the junky offsuit hands. Probably not this suited one gapper. So we're probably something like that. Quite a bit tighter. That's at 16.4%. That is reflective of his range. Let's check pre-flop again. He calls 2-bet small blind 19%. Yeah, that's probably close. I think that's probably his range. Now, our sixes, they're going to be ahead because we've got pocket pair for both. So against the button, you can see we're going to be at 55%. Against a small blind, we're going to be at 52%. So if small blind has the tighter range, the stronger range. And at this time, once we get called, we're hoping for a suitable flop, where maybe we could pick it up or we hit the flop hard. So the board comes ace 9 6 with 2 clubs, which is good for us. I mean, we hit trips, and with the ace on the board, it limits the number of club draws that I think are going to be out there. You don't have all of the ace x clubs hands. I expect villain 4 to check, most of their range. I do have donking 1 out of 20 times. I forgot. I don't have really any extra notes on him. So if he were to donk here, I would expect him to probably donk with like a ace low maybe. But with me playing, it looks like I've been at the table for 280 some hands. He's been, I don't know how long he's been at this table, but he might give me credit for the ace. So he's probably just going to check, and if he has a big hand, maybe check raise me. So it's going to be his entire range. He checks. I'm going to bet. I bet 6.64, so like 2/3, which I think is appropriate. I would do that with a lot of my aces, because I think any of the aces are going to call, especially with trip sixes. I think your ace queen, ace jack, ace 10, ace 9, I think any of the aces are going to call. I think your club draws are going to call. I think maybe your 9s are going to call. Your 10s, jacks, and queens are going to call. Both of these fold to c-bet 64%, fold to c-bet 60%. I don't think they're gonna really call like fives, fours, threes, and deuces. Probably not sevens, eights, and sevens and eights. I mean, could be wrong. The sixes, 6x hands. There's only one left. These players aren't looking like they're going to call with any pair at this point, but I do think what we're targeting now are the aces. So I bet 2/3. Villain 3 raises, and then villain 4 calls. So I think villain 4 facing that raise is only really going to be calling with your solid 2-pair hands. So you're looking at ace queen, ace jack, maybe ace 10. I think your ace 8s, ace 7, those are just going to fold. I think your 2 pairs going to call, your set's going to call. Maybe your flush draw is going to call. I don't think open-ended straight draw is going to call. So you can see that most of his range isn't in that range. It's such a small percent. And he just folds, so we'll take him out. Now, why does this guy raise? So let's get the board in here. We bet. Now, he might think that we don't have an ace, in which case he's going to raise because his hand could be vulnerable. So, we'll give him top pair, we'll give him the aces, and is he going to raise with all of them? Maybe not. He might not raise with these. He might raise with ace 7, ace 8, ace 10 for straight draw possibilities, ace jack, ace queen. So we'll leave all of those aces. I think 2 pairs going to raise, a set's going to raise, middle pair. So I bet 6, and then he raises to 17.76. So that might be what, a half pot raise. We'll see. So to figure out what percentage of the pot, you take my bet size times 3, and you add what's in the current pot, so that's 10. So after my bet, the pot size is 29.92, and he raised 17.76, and that represents 59%. So yeah, almost 60% is what his raise was. Could he do it with the flush draw? Yeah, maybe. Could he do it with the gut shot? Yeah, maybe. What about the weak pairs and the middle pairs? I don't think so. I don't think the 9s, unless he is a player that thinks he's testing to see if I miss, if my ace misses. So if he has those hands, if he has a 6, or if he has an 7s or 8s, he's making this play because he doesn't believe that I actually have an ace. So at this point, I have him raising at 30.4%, which is probably okay. Yeah, pocket pair, middle pair. 2-card backdoor flush draws. I think he's some of those are in his range. All right, so our question: should we just call or should we re-raise him? I think if we re-raise him, we're gonna get called by two pair in sets and flush draws. Um, so let's take that out. So if I re-raise him, he's going to call with two pair, his sets, and his flush draws. And that means I am at 87.9%. So this is 28.4% that he calls out of, and the 30.4% is what he bets. So he is calling, it's here, 28 out of 30. So he's calling 93% of the time if I raise. I kind of think maybe I should have raised here instead of just calling. So I believe I called. And I think my rationale with calling is that if I raise, he's going to dump all of his aces. He's going to dump all of his one pair hands, and he may dump his club draw. But I think with the club draws, I think they're going to likely call. A lot of the people call, and we're going to be ahead. They have to catch up. I didn't. I called. I didn't raise. I called, and then the king of clubs got there. And this is probably not my favorite hand at this point. I didn't want to see a club come. But at the same time, when we look at his flush, it still just represents a small percentage of the total hands that he could have raised with. So I check, which I think is fine, and he bets 28. 28 into 45, so he bets, more than half pot. Is that 60%? 60% pot again. What is he going to bet with now? I still think he's going to bet with the flush. Probably the set, probably the two pair. I think maybe he could bet with the flush draws. So maybe he had ace queen, offsuit, ace jack, offsuit in his range. So if he has the club, I think he might bet now because he's 4 to a flush. With the ace 10, I don't know about that. I don't know if he bet that high because he has to think, what am I calling with? I called that check raise, and I do see a lot of people, they bet and then they have a hard time folding to the check raise, but then they'll fold to the turn bet for some reason because they didn't put any more money in there. So on this bet, I don't think he's betting with a gut shot, but I think he's possibly with the flush draws. What about the top pair hands? Do I think he's going to be betting with top pair? And that top pair is, your aces. I don't know. I think maybe since he's representing a big hand, I think he probably will bet those. Again, just to see what I'm going to do. I don't like it. I don't think I would bet again if I had the ace. And definitely, these sevens and eights now, ace eights, ace sevens, and also the ace 10, I don't think it's worth it for him to bet anymore. So I think maybe that's what we do, is take those out and have him bet 52% of the time. And against that range, again, we're ahead because you can see that it's two pair. It's a big chunk. So out of his betting range, 26% is two pair, 52% is top pair. So we're ahead of that range. There's small chance that he has a flush or a set. So at least we're gonna have to call. And I don't like it because if we call now, then we're going to expect to probably face an all-in, and it could be a bluff. River was a 10 of hearts. I checked, and I think that's fine. I think that's fine. I think with how he's playing, if he's being aggressive with betting top pair and two pair, He may bet those hands again, and we're just planning to call. I don't like calling, but I think this is going to be, we're planning a check call. So I checked, and fortunately he checked. So I think at that point, I don't think he's got the flush. I would have expected him to have a flush. I think I would have expected him to bet a set again, maybe. Two pair and top pair probably check. So I think we're way ahead, and I'm going to expect to win the pot once it checked. So he shows ace king. He showed top pair, those top two pair. And what's interesting is I don't have it in his range. I assumed he would have bet, and maybe he would have raised. So if we change, what his raising range is from the button, we can see that with this top pair, we're gonna put in, the king. We're gonna have ace king in his range now, and it looks pretty good. I think we could easily check raise and he'll get called and we'll get called. So kind of think the flop probably should have check raised with our trips, get it in at that point. Ace king calls, ace queen probably calls, club draw probably calls. Whereas with a hand like that, you saw him freeze up. When that club, he still bet because he had two pair, but he froze up on the river because he doesn't have that flush. All right, hand number two. Didn't get it because I assumed he would have raised with ace king offsuit. But we'll make a note that he didn't, passed up on that opportunity. So if we see him again, we know we have an idea of how better to play against him. Look tomorrow for a couple more hands.